We are live. We are live. Welcome to College Football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Flugar. We cover everything in college football because we love everything in college football. And if you do as well, please subscribe to our channel. Smash the like button if you like our content. Share this video with your family and your friends if you want to support this college football Rebel Outpost channel. Hit the $, make a comment, and I'll get to your super chat as quick as I possibly can. Welcome into the studio that sits on the corner of Keith Jackson Parkway in Kurt Gowdy Avenue. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to be a legend. Do not be afraid to be a legend with your comments in the chat room and with your phone calls later in the show. First of all, I want to apologize for not having a live show yesterday. The table, I was too busy. Too busy with this channel and a whole lot of other things. Too busy talking with people. Too busy trying to figure out what's going on. Just too busy. So I could not pull the trigger. We pulling the trigger for today, however. And I wanted to do a live show earlier in the day just in case we have to do a live show later in the day. I also have to apologize to everybody in the Southeastern Conference. The fan base that is in the chat room today, who are going to watch this show later on. I will not make my order of finish prediction for the SEC today. I've got all the work done. All my slides are in place. All my breakdowns of all 16 teams are in place. It's official, the SEC network. Congratulations, Oklahoma and Texas. Congratulations to the whole SEC, 16 teams. The most powerful, valuable conference, the most successful conference in the country. The Southeastern Conference. Now, the fat guy from Minnesota. I know everybody disagrees with me. But I nailed those ACC predictions. I nailed the Big 12 predictions. I've got it all right with my Big 10 predictions. Then, the SEC. I've got Georgia on my mind. I've got Georgia number 1. From 2 to 8, I became paralyzed. I felt the cold winds blowing in. Greg the Cooler was back for a moment. I shut the door. I closed the windows. I turned the furnace on. I said, whoa. Slow down. You move too fast. Hold on a second. I know I promised that I was going to do this July 1st, the SEC. We had it all mapped out. I've been following our deadlines, pretty much. ACC, Big 12, Big 10, SEC, and then later on we're going to be doing the G5, Notre Dame, Oregon State, Washington State. But I'm not going to hold myself to this SEC deadline. I've got a team that I absolutely love this year in the SEC. I've got them in 7th place. Right now. Out of the college football playoffs. 7th place. That can't be. There's something going on here. I'm paralyzed. The SEC has got the Greg the Cooler I don't know. And then I started looking at the schedules. And then I felt myself just circling around and around and around and around, and I became paralyzed. I don't know what the hell I'm going to do with my SEC predictions. Go right to Georgia. You guys know how I feel about Georgia. They're the number one team or the number 2 team in the country, depending on if it's odd or even days. On odd days, Ohio State is the number 1 team in the country. On even days, Georgia is. It's July 2nd. Georgia is the number 1 team in the country. Beyond that, Alabama. I like Alabama. We're gonna do this officially when I have clarity. That's when I'm gonna do it. I think Alabama's gonna be very good this year. The quarterback puts a lid on Alabama. Is he gonna flourish more with Kalen DeBoer? Kalen DeBoer likes that downfield passing. And I don't think Milroe can do that. I'm confused on Alabama. They're good, but I'm confused. Ole Miss. I love Ole Miss this year. I love their skill positions. Their quarterback, Jackson Dart. The offensive line. You know, it's just Missouri. I love Missouri. I absolutely love Missouri. Luther Burden, Brady Cook. Even Texas A&M. I don't think I have them rated high enough. I think Connor Weigman is going to be brilliant this year. Absolutely brilliant. Nick Scorton, the defensive end, and they got another defensive end on the other side of the defensive line. The Aggies are going to crush people. I think the Texas A&M Aggies are going to surprise a lot of people. Game 1 against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. I don't know what I'm going to do. I am more confused about the SEC than I am about the Big 12. So, I cannot do the Big 12. I can't do the SEC predictions today. I'm seeing people are talking about the court case live. I decided not to do it because I didn't know exactly when I was going to be able to come on live. I am following somebody here that is in the courtroom. Judge Bledsoe says he will not rule today on Clemson's motion to stay dismissed, but he'll endeavor to issue a written ruling before Clemson's and ACC's hearing in South Carolina on July 12th. We are going to try to cover that Pickens County court pleadings on July 12th live. We're going to try to do that if they have a live stream. John Blau says that we're in a break, so I will tweet my favorite part of the Clemson's ACC hearing thus far. The ACC compared Clemson to Captain Louis Renault from Casablanca, playing the clip where Renault is shot. There was gambling transpiring. Basically, Clemson was being naive about the gore. So, if somebody in the chat, we can... Yeah, I just decided not to cover it. There's too many other things to cover, and I would rather cover the hearings when we believe there's going to be a ruling. Those are the ones that I want to cover. More things that... okay, so... I want to talk about... there's a couple of news items I want to get to through real quick. I want to get to John Wilner's Pac-2 and Friends article from the other day. But I do want to talk about, again, what people believe or trying to speculate on what is about to happen when it comes to the Florida State, Clemson, ACC drama that is before us. I also want to put out what I believe. In fact, I'll start this monologue talking about Josh Pate. And then I'm going to end the monologue discussing what Jeff Cameron said on his show yesterday, the Jeff Cameron show, Florida State, who's been on the job for 27 years covering Florida State Seminole news. I'm going to cover what he said yesterday again. The chatter, and Jeff Cameron discussed the chatter. Be it wrong, be it correct, or be it incorrect, we're not going to know until it happens. But the chatter among those in the industry changed the third week of May, the fourth week of May, all through June, and now we've started in July. I reported some of that change. We tore down the chalk, the odds, and who's going where when it comes to the ACC implosion. We had Clemson and Florida State going to the Big Ten. We ripped those down. We were told that there is no chalk. That is definitely not the chalk. We went through some of the reasons why a few days ago, talking about, different tiers of research universities. Florida State, I believe they fit the Big Ten model. Clemson, they've done quite well for themselves the last 8 years. But we went through the history of realignment, expansion, especially for the Big Ten. And historically, the Big Ten would not add on a Florida State and Clemson as a combination. They just won't do it. Now, could they do it this time? Possibly, but they're not going to rush in and take that combo. We said that on May 23rd, May 28th. We tore down the odds, and we are more firm with that than ever. And we're sitting here on July 2nd. It doesn't mean the door is completely shut on Florida State and Clemson going to the Big Ten, but it would take a lot of ups and downs and different turns down the road on this story for that to happen, from what we have been told. And we're not the only ones being told that. That's the point I want to make. I have nothing against Florida State, Clemson, or any of these programs. They're all more valuable than my beloved Minnesota Golden Gophers. I'm just trying to tell you what I'm being told without burning sources, and that is so critically important to what I do. And I'm going to tell you another thing. Nobody knows for sure what is going to happen that I know of. And I think, but I can tell you what they're saying. That I can tell you. And it matches exactly with what Jeff Cameron said yesterday, because he said he has heard that this is, and it changed. Back in April, I think it was April 4th, somewhere around there, kinetic energy, I was talking about kinetic energy, third-party talks, more things were happening. We know certain things happen, discussions. Clemson, Florida State got good valuations. That's one of the reasons why they went to the court. Kinetic energy, right? Big Ten, not first-party talks, but definitely the chatter behind the curtain, it changed. Overwhelmingly changed. And that's why we had to change. We had to rip down those odds. Did I flip-flop? Absolutely. But when a person flip-flops, they better be clear about it, they better be truthful about it, and they better tell you. And that's what I've done. That's the best that I can do. I go where the story goes. And the chatter has changed. Now that chatter today could be absolutely incorrect. But I'm telling you what the chatter is. And we're going to go more into it at the end of this monologue. It definitely changed in May. Not in June. It just carried through June. It will make more sense when I get to the back end of this monologue, and then we'll delve into it further. But first, I want to talk about Josh Pate and his clues and his tweets. And I have spent time, excuse me. I want to thank everybody who has come in at the start of the show. I'm not going to do a roll call like I normally do. So individually, everybody, please, I thank you for coming on into the chat room and being part of PATC lunchtime here on Tuesday, July 2nd. So I just want to thank you all. The Josh Pate, we've tried to analyze it, we've speculated on it, and we had a lot of great phone calls, and you continue to do that, and I speculated on it, and I was going, this makes sense, but this doesn't make sense, and a lot of people in the industry have been talking about it. And obviously nobody knows what Josh Pate has been told other than Josh Pate, and maybe, I don't know, maybe his producer or boss, I don't know. So what I'm about to say is, of course, it's speculation. I don't know Josh. I don't know what Josh, obviously I don't know what Josh Pate has been told. But after talking with people in the industry, if they had a guess on it, if they had to take a guess, I think they would, if I could group them up and if I could bring them here into the studio and if they could openly talk with you, I think they would say that they believe Josh Pate is referring to a settlement. Settlement talks that are going on. That it probably, again, this is speculation, but this seems to be the consensus as well. That it probably isn't Florida State coming out and saying, we're gone, bye, we'll continue in the courts. We're gone from this conference. We'll figure out our grant of rights later. People don't believe that's what Josh Pate is inferring. That this is a more developed story than just saying, bye, we're gone. Also, the consensus seems to be that what Josh Pate is referring to probably isn't some big controlled implosion, demolition. And the main reason for that is it's the North Carolina piece of this. If Florida State is about to reach a settlement, and they know, like, it's all been determined through the settlement, through this controlled implosion, demolition, that they know where they're going and everything's all settled. Florida State we still might not see any indication of that in public. In other words, Florida State could get a Board of Trustees public meeting set up a couple days before this, go to, have it in public, say bam, bam, bam. This is, that piece, that could work. The Clemson piece could work. It's the North Carolina piece on a controlled implosion. People in the industry believe they would know if North Carolina was part of a controlled implosion. That there's too many people that would have to be involved. The Board of Governors would have to, something would be said, somebody would know, it would leak. It's too it's too complicated. And most people in the industry believe there's not going to be a controlled implosion where everything is dictated at the time of settlement in North Carolina is not included. So, again, just speculation, but it does seem to be the consensus that it's neither the porridge is too cold, the porridge is too hot, the porridge is just right type of story. It's not. And all these are big stories, don't get me wrong. But it's not just Florida State saying, yeah, we're gone, bye. Well, we're going to file a notice of withdrawal and we'll keep doing everything, bye. It's not that, and it's not this massive, coordinated, controlled demolition. What the consensus is, they believe what Josh Pate is referring to. It looks like we might have a potential of a settlement in which things are sort of settled. Some of the things are settled. Those determinations are going on, and ESPN might have the inside track getting Florida State and Clemson because of the settlement. Could be, probably, maybe, but it wouldn't be official. But it's settlement talk. And it would satisfy ESPN, Phillips, and the whole ACC conference for Clemson and Florida State. And that there would be a way for others. So basically, a settlement is what people believe Josh Pate is referring to. Legal lawyers telling Pate this. It's not just about Florida State, it's about other schools. But this story probably isn't everything is signed, sealed, and delivered once the story comes out. That is what people believe. And hopefully we'll find out in the month of July. I'm going to get to the Jeff Cameron piece. I'm going to get through the chatter behind the curtain, changing in the third week of May, fourth week of May, and we'll talk about that again in more detail at the end of this monologue. Daniel Gorby, I believe that things changed when negotiations started. ESPN and ACC started talking about a restructuring network agreement where ESPN helps with settlement for Florida State and Clemson to the SEC. Well, Daniel Gorby, you probably said it better than how I was going to say it. So I thank you for the comment. That is part of, again, I'm not reporting that that's going on. I'm not putting the odds up on the board. I think this is a growing possibility. Well, the chatter, this is a growing possibility that the new network deal and this part with Florida State and Clemson could be all connected. But I don't think the story is going to stop there. In other words, I don't think the drawbridge gets pulled up And Florida State and Clemson are the only schools that are going to leave the ACC. So I think there's more to the story. And as Jeff Cameron said, and other people are saying, nobody's got the whole story. But thank you for the super chat. Thank you for your generosity, Daniel. And thank you for saying something more concise than I'm able to say it. I appreciate it, and we'll get back into that later in the show. Again, that's a growing possibility in the minds of people in the industry. Nobody is putting an article out on that. Nobody is reporting that. I don't think anything's a done deal. But the chatter on this completely changed in the third week of May. And I had to tell you all, and we'll get more into it later on in the show. Thank you, Daniel. I do appreciate it. Let's, the Evil Badger has made another trip around the sun. Wisconsin's future is so bright, I gotta wear shades. Holy smokes. What are we talking about? What are we talking about here, Ryan Willie, the Evil Badger? No! Isn't that tampering of some sort if ESPN is involved? Yes. This is why, Sean, one of the reasons why I believe what the consensus is and what Josh Pate is referring to is a simple settlement. But, along with those settlements, some relationships might have been reattached. But yes, this is why the chatter, I keep referring to the chatter. This is going to be a chatter show. Because I got more to get to when we talk about what Jeff Cameron said yesterday and other people are saying. Sean, you are correct. And that is why many people think the story that's going to hit first is schools have reached a settlement. If it gets finalized, again, it may not be done right now. It probably isn't, ladies and gentlemen. I think the little bit of leak that came out from the legal people is a settlement and then with an attached story of this new ESPN media contract. Yeah, so I don't think where Florida State and Clemson are going to go to will not be decided officially when this Josh Pate news comes out. That is what people believe. Okay, before we get on to these other stories, we got to get on them too quick because I want to talk about what Jeff Cameron said and what the chatter and the changing, what people believe in the third week of May, and it's continued on July 2nd. I want to talk about first the Utah head coach in waiting. Pete Thamel, yesterday's sources, Utah's naming defensive coordinator Morgan Scalley as the successor to longtime coach Kyle Whittingham. Scalley will make at least $5 million per year as head coach when he is elevated per his latest contract there is no set timetable for Whittingham to leave. Pete Thamel, ESPN Sports. ESPN Sports. Utah has a succession plan in place. Very good news for the Utah Utes, in my opinion. Mountain West announces 14 conference football games will be televised by True TV and streamed via Max. The great Brett McMurphy, TNT Sports, Warner Brothers Discovery, and the Mountain West reached a multi-year agreement for a full slate of live college football games to air exclusively on True TV and Max beginning this season. Again, more and more college football content is going to TNT, True TV, all of it under the umbrella of WBD, Warner Brothers Discovery. And now we're hearing reports that Paramount Plus and Max could be combining forces. There's so much stuff going on. But WBD is getting more and more into the college football world, and that's a good thing. And that is a good thing. One more story we got to get to. Real quick. John Wilner, Mercury News. The Pac-2 mailbag. Options for Washington State and Oregon State. Finances of a Mountain West merger. Defining football relevance. And more. Again, what happens in the ACC affects what is going on in the Mountain West Conference, in the Pac-2. The question by Trout Tyler. It seems expensive for the Pac-12 to poach Mountain West schools, but could the conference offset the penalty by reducing payouts to any new Mountain West members? I don't think they can do that, because I don't think the money difference between what you get as a Mountain West Conference school and what you're going to be as a Pac-2 member school is going to be large enough for any of these Mountain West schools to take a discount. What valuation for Pac-2 media deal would justify Mountain West schools paying an exit fee and possibly temporary $1 million to $2 million reduction? Wilner, a great question that has multiple layers of financial complexity. So let's start with the basics and drill down from there. According to the terms of the schedule and agreement between the Pac-12 and the Mountain West, the former would owe the latter a poaching penalty of approximately $10 million per team. That cost comes in addition to the exit fee departing Mountain West schools would owe their former conference. How much? Figure on roughly about $20 million if the departing schools give more than 1 year of notice. $35 to $40 million if they give less than 1 year of notice. Washington State and Oregon State, we've talked about this before, will have at least $65 million at their disposal. The amount withheld from the 10 departing universities that can be used to cover the poaching penalty for up to 6 Mountain West schools. In the Holy Smokes Theater, we have those 6 schools on the stage. We know that Washington State and Oregon State have received valuations from those 6 schools up on the stage. We reported to you that months ago. Washington State and Oregon State, they do have the money, if they choose to poach. But it is very, very complicated. Not just with what's going on in the ACC, where Washington State and Oregon State want to make sure they are available if the ACC has to backfill after the implosion. But it's even more complicated than that. And John Wilner does a great job of covering it. But that doesn't account for the departure fee owed by the outgoing Mountain West schools to their conference. Here's at least 3 options for covering that cost. Help from Central Campus. A path obviously would require approval from university presidents. He's talking about the 6 schools that are on the stage in the Holy Smokes Theater. A one-time loan from the Pac-12, which potentially could dip into the war chest that includes the $100 million in Rose Bowl revenue. Diverting distributions from the Pac-12 over time. This strategy would work only if the departing schools negotiate a multi-year payment plan with the remaining Mountain West members, which will assuredly take a hardline approach. The media value is difficult to sketch because it depends entirely on the configuration of the new Pac-12. A rebuilt league that features Washington State and Oregon State and 6 arrivals from the Mountain West. Fresno State is on the right side of the stage. Boise State is at the center of the stage. San Diego State is on the left of Boise State. Colorado State, UNLV, and Air Force. Those are the 6 arrivals that I believe Wilner is talking about. This is what we reported months ago. If these Mountain West schools decide to leave their other 6 Mountain West Conference brothers and sisters behind, it's a big decision. Big decision. Back to the article. A rebuilt league that features Washington State, Oregon State, and 6 arrivals from the Mountain West would carry a different valuation than a rebuilt league that features Stanford and Cal, if the ACC implodes, or a rebuilt league that features selected schools from Conference USA or elsewhere. The Mountain West current deal with Fox and CBS will spin off about $5 million per school in the final years of the contract cycle. Unless Stanford and Cal are involved, the value of a reconfigured Pac-12 probably won't exceed $10 million per school. Is that enough of a gap between what you're currently making with the Mountain West, how much you could make with the Mountain West, versus how much you would make in a reconfigured Pac-12? Is that enough? I don't know. It's a question that Boise State's going to have to answer. It's a question that Colorado State is going to have to answer. It's a question that San Diego State is going to have to answer. If those evaluations are correct that Wilner put up on the screen. For the sake of this exercise, let's presume the rebuilt Pac-12 media deal is worth $8 million per school on average. If the new schools diverted $2 million annually to repay the Mountain West over 6 years, for example, that would leave them with a new distribution amount that slightly exceeds what they're currently receiving from the Mountain West. It would not cover the full departure fee of $18 million, not optimal. I don't think that's even in the cards. I think the departure fee, the exit fee, every other fee is going to have to get paid by Oregon State, Washington State using their war chest. I don't even think it's a possibility that the Mountain West schools would have to pay some on their own. Any scenario in which the Mountain West schools leave for the Pac-12 that doesn't involve at least 9 members voting to dissolve the conference, thereby voiding the departure fee, almost certainly would require help from the Central Campus. And any willingness to help presumably would be baked into the decision to change conferences. One more question we're going to cover in the Mercury News John Wilner's article. You've mentioned since last August that the chance of Washington State and Oregon State getting an invite to a power conference is very slim. Yet you've also mentioned that the upcoming football season is pivotal for those schools to remain relevant. What does relevancy mean for the Pac-2 schools? Defining relevance is tricky, John Wildner says, but will offer the following general framework. The fate of the Pac-2 will be a national story when the season begins here in 2024. Because of the unprecedented nature of their plight, they must take advantage of the attention and pile up the early wins. For Washington State, that means beating the Texas Tech Red Raiders in Pullman on September 7th to create the hype for the Apple Cup 1 week later. Oregon State faces a similar task. Beat San Diego State on the road in week 2 to generate attention for the Oregon game the following Saturday. If the Cougars and Beavers win their rivalry games on September 14th, all the better. But they must be competitive. Avoid losing streaks. The Cougars lost 6 in a row during the 2023 season. They can't afford something similar this fall. Even a 3-game losing streak would push them off the radar. Be entertaining. It's not only about winning games and sneaking in to the national rankings. The Pac-2 schools, Oregon State, Washington State, they need to score points to improve their chances of making the highlight shows aired on ESPN and Fox. The more 50 to 45 games they play, the better. Become bowl eligible. The Pac-12 bowl partners aren't changing. Departing and remaining schools alike will be placed in the same bowls as usual, which ensures Washington State, Oregon State, they have access of the bowl games, of being part of the postseason narrative as long as they win at least 6 games. And finally, in the article, the twists and turns of the season will undoubtedly provide Washington State and Oregon State with opportunities for media attention on a week-to-week basis. But those are the fundamentals of consistent relevance. Holy smokes. John Wildner in the Mercury News talking about, well, Pac-2 and friends, what's going on in the Holy Smokes Theater. It's a complicated business. We know that Oregon State and Washington State have received evaluations. We know that they also want to keep an exit hatch, valuations for those Mountain West schools. They also want to keep an exit hatch just in case the ACC implodes. Kirk Schultz has been on public record. He said it in public just a little bit ago. He said, boy, this ACC thing, he doesn't think it's going to last. He thinks something is going to happen before the end of the football season. We're going to know. We're going to know where, if we, Washington State, have an opportunity to be one of the partners, one of the backfield candidates to go into the ACC. So a lot of things going on in the background. Washington State, Oregon State, they're trying to do 2 things at once. Stay relevant. Become as valuable as possible. See if you can get into the ACC after it implodes. But at the same time, if those doors are shut, they want to be able to create the most valued G5 conference they can possibly build. And that is going to take using a lot of that war chest money that they are collecting in the divorce with the other Pac-10 schools. Okay, we covered that. Now let's get to Jeff Cameron and what he said yesterday and the chatter behind the curtain. And I'm paraphrasing it here. You can watch the Jeff Cameron show from yesterday and listen to yourself. Jeff Cameron wrote down some notes here. Jeff Cameron said he first talked about Josh Pate. And, he talked about how Josh Pate said that something's going to happen in July. And Jeff said, yeah, either July or August. Something's going to be announced, he believes. Something's going to be announced here soon. Within, this month or August. But Jeff Cameron says he doesn't know what it is. He's been working 27 years in the business. He has lots of contacts. He talked about what happened on July 1st when all these rumors were percolating, when Mike Alford sent an emoji that something was going to be announced. And Cameron said it didn't take him very long to figure out that nothing was going to be announced. Because somebody would have leaked something. And nobody was leaking anything. Jeff Cameron and his other co-hosts, they say, Jeff will know that something is popping when somebody tells him something and then somebody else tells him something and it's the same, and those two are in different worlds. Because there's a lot of different worlds of information. There are your boosters, there are your industry, the reporters, there are administrative in athletic departments. There's different worlds of information. And if somebody's telling you something from one world and another world is telling you the same thing, that's when you know you got something. And that is very true. Jeff said none of that happened yesterday. He knew quite early that nothing was really going on. Kind of a mass hysteria yesterday. But a lot of that you can understand. Florida State fans want out. Florida State wants out. They are going to get out of the ACC. These are things that are going to happen. Just trying to figure out the process, when and where they're going to end up. Cameron, again, Florida State wants out. They're going to get out. This is where it, to me, it got interesting. Jeff Cameron went on to say, and again I'm paraphrasing, you can check it out yourself, show yesterday, people in the industry, they're trying to figure this out, just like the people on the message boards, just like the people on the YouTube channels. That's what Jeff said. These reporters, they're getting together, they're talking. Nobody knows everything. What Jeff believes, in what Jeff has heard, and he's heard this recently, obviously, is that these two conferences, the Big Ten and the SEC, it's about accumulating assets. It's about building the strongest 20-team, he said 24-team conference eventually. But Jeff went on to say he didn't believe when this first started, and he especially believes now, that ESPN will do all they can to not allow Fox to grab Florida State and Clemson. He said that with what I would call vigor. He inferred that this is what people are saying and the people in the industry. This is his belief. He doesn't know for sure. And he says anybody who tells you they know for sure, they're not telling you the truth. Unless it's the decision makers themselves. And on this story, I would agree. On this story, I would absolutely agree. On May 23rd and May 28th, we had to rip down those odds of Florida State and Clemson into the Big Ten. The script has been flipped. Big Ten, and we talked about this before, we believe is not going to be real aggressive. There is advantages that the ESPN has, and it doesn't need to involve tampering. It doesn't need to involve tampering. It's just they have an advantage. They are the media right. They hold the distribution rights to the ACC. They're gonna have advantages. Now, the relationship between Florida State and ESPN, not good. Right? We've got a story here. I'm going to put this up real quick. We're going to talk about it here in a little bit. Clemson playing South Carolina on Black Friday. Clemson refuses the ACC request. David Hood, great senior writer, Clemson, July 2nd, this morning on TigerNet. Clemson playing South Carolina on Black Friday. Clemson refuses the request. Clemson University refused the request by the Atlantic Coast Conference and ESPN to move this year's home game against South Carolina to a Friday night after Thanksgiving on Black Friday. Court documents obtained by TigerNet pertaining to the school's lawsuit against the conference in efforts to break the grant of rights revealed that the conference and ESPN made the request. The conference asked Clemson to move the game scheduled for Saturday, November 30th to a Friday night primetime game on ESPN, Black Friday. The rivalry game played on Thursdays until 1959 when President John F. Kennedy was shot. In 1963, the game was postponed a week and played the following Saturday. From the first time the two schools met in 1896 to the 1959 meeting, Clemson and South Carolina played in Columbia during the week of the state fair. Their first 57 meetings were played on the third Thursday of every October. Thanksgiving is later than usual this year and will be observed on Thursday, November 28th. There's more to the article. The league and ESPN agreed to several concessions regarding Clemson's future scheduling. So the league, the ACC, and ESPN had concessions for Clemson. What Clemson wanted, November 23rd game versus the Citadel, scheduled at noon. Confirmed prime time for Friday, November 29th game. Agreement to switch schedule 2027 Labor Day Monday conference game featuring Clemson to a Clemson home ACC game. Limit of 2 road ACC games in 2024 played in prime time. Agreement that the University of South Carolina would reciprocate with hosting a future Clemson versus South Carolina game on Black Friday. The league said that despite the ACC said that despite having secured these concessions, And despite other ACC teams having it agreed to play on Black Friday in previous instances, Clemson declined to move the game. So this was a big story that came out this morning. Clemson's athletic director, Graham Neff, and senior associated commissioner for ACC wrote, as has been indicated, in an email from the ACC to Clemson, athletic director, this is what the ACC said. As has been indicated to you during this process, the conference office is disappointed in Clemson's university lack of cooperation on this matter. As all ACC members know, it is incumbent upon the ACC and its institutions to work in good faith with ESPN on football scheduling issues. This cooperation maximizes the value of our relationship with our media partner and strengthens our collective future. Clemson's decision not to do so in this instance is harmful toward that goal. With regards, Michael Strickland. I got a few things to say about that, as you can imagine. How big a story is this? I don't think it's that big. When you are one of the top programs in the conference, Clemson being one of the top two football brands in the conference, you have that power to say, nah, we're good. Nah, we're not doing that. It happens all the time. All the time. The SEC and the Big Ten? Are you kidding me? There's different tiers of how much power you got when it comes to your scheduling. Clemson, if you don't need the exposure because you are the biggest brand in the conference, the top two brands in the conference, you're declining stuff like this. It's just the way it is. Now, it is important for the ACC to expand their bandwidth, the value in their in when it comes to their content, to help them in their ratings and stuff with ESPN. I understand the ACC's motive to try to do this. The Big Ten would love to put Michigan on some of these games. Ohio State, it ain't happening. And Clemson denied it. Much like the top teams in the Big Ten, the SEC would. So while it's kind of juicy, kind of dramatic, the Clemson decline, the ACC's upset, I don't think it's relevant to what we're talking about with Clemson trying to get out of the ACC. That's my take on it. Are the relationships between Florida State and ESPN? Of course they're bad. Absolutely. And most Florida State fans are like, we're not going to get bullied. We're not going to the ESPN. We're not coming. That's it. We're done. And then they have a lot of other good reasons why they want Florida State into the Big Ten. I get it. And there are Florida State fans, I get them on my phone all the time saying, I think we should, no disrespect, Greg, but I think Florida State should be in the SEC. It's going to, a baseball pro, everything, a whole athletic department where I can travel to these games. No disrespect, man. I completely understand. Florida State has, they're a great, big, massive fan base, incredibly valuable. I said, as we're trying to connect the dots, and when I came out on May 23rd, May 28th, and you hear what Jeff Cameron thinks, he thinks Florida State and Clemson are going to go to the SEC. And I think that's becoming a more consensus if people had to guess when it comes to people in the industry. I know we've had people in the industry saying that the SEC has no interest in those schools. Because, to be honest with you, there wasn't any kinetic energy going on. But I think the chatter has changed. Paul Feinbaum, let's just take Paul Feinbaum, for example. He has expressed every possible he has said everything. He has said that Florida State months last year. He said Florida State not wanted by SEC. Paul Feinbaum also said, and Jeff Cameron mentioned this, that Florida State is a perfect fit for the SEC. Now, a few days ago, Paul Feinbaum said that maybe Florida State isn't a fit for the Big Ten. Don't fit their academic model. I disagreed, although I do think there would be a hesitancy for the Big Ten to take a Florida State Clemson combo, which I've talked about before, and I'll talk about it again here in a little bit. So Paul Feinbaum has said everything. And you know what? I don't blame him. I do have a suspicion, again, consider this speculation. But I got a feeling that Paul Feinbaum is picking up on what the chatter is, because he's part of the chatter. He's the big part of the chatter. What the industry believes is happening, it's unfolding. When Paul Feinbaum says that Florida State might not be the fit, I think if you put truth serum, if you gave Paul Feinbaum a shot of truth serum, again, this is just speculation on my part, I believe Paul Feinbaum would say, I think Florida State's going to go to the SEC. The chatter has changed. There's no question about it. I've been told by many people. I mean, this is really overwhelming. Whether they are correct or not, whether that chatter is correct or not, I understand as much as I possibly could understand, because I'm not walking in your shoes. But this distrust, this hate from Florida State fans in regards to ESPN, nah. We're not going to be told where to go. We're not going to be told what to do. We're good enough for the Big Ten, and you are. But I'm wondering if there's a component here that is, I think the component in why the chatter has changed, and I've tried to express this in a way that wouldn't burn sources, is that I really, truly believe, and I cannot get into it all. I truly believe fundamentally, institutionally, legally, whatever you want to, all these things, that the Big Ten is going to be cautious and deliberate, knowing that maybe it wouldn't give them an advantage if they rushed in anyways. So, and I think everybody has picked up on that. I know we have been told straight out by my most highest sources that this is true. And this is why I flip-flopped and got raked over the coals, which is fine. That's what I'm here for. But I got to tell you, when we go where the story goes, and that's where the story is going. So, I think this is where we are. I believe, I guess, and this is just my thoughts on the consensus, the chatter is we might be heading towards some sort of settlement. Maybe, possibly, the legal people, something got leaked. People believe this could happen. ESPN, new deal with ACC kind of unfolding. Florida State's not going to sign it. Clemson's not going to sign it. They're in the courts. They might get their release. They might pay out some money. And there's a whole bunch of details, and not everybody knows the details. But, and again, we're not going to put it up on the board that the chalk is Florida State and Clemson to the SEC. We're not going to do that because, my goodness, we just don't have that. That door is locked on us. But as we look through the keyholes and we hear more and more people say what we're saying, I think institutionally for the Big Ten, I think they're going to be very meticulous on how they go about this. Not just legally, but with their presidents and all their interests. That I'm not sure if Clemson and Florida State are going to be patient enough for all that. Maybe they will be. Maybe they won't. Maybe during this time of reaching a settlement, knowing that ESPN is pushing possibly for a settlement, that maybe that some of those bridges are being rebuilt. That could be. So that's how I'm putting it to you guys. And my one certainty in this is that the chatter changed in May. Whether the story was always the story, I don't know. But the chatter changed in May. Suddenly, whoa. Some information got out, and now I think people are speculating it in a different manner. I'm going to get to your chats, get to your phone calls. We're going to open up the phone lines here. Let me get to it. Maria Hernandez, Flugar, Garcia Rojas. She's in the house. She is the moderator. She does rule with an iron fist. EA Sports is Florida State to the Big Ten. Let me tell you something about EA Sports. Let me tell you something about EA Sports. Once again, Chad Bracey, yes, the answer is yes. That's when the Money Perch said, not about the SEC, but Florida State. Anyways, EA Sports once again disrespected my Minnesota Golden Gophers. I watched that Dynasty Mode thing that they put on this morning. And at one point they said you can take a team, a program that is a perennial favorite and you know high level recruiting, or you can take a smaller program and rebuild them. And as they said those exact words, they had the Minnesota Golden Gophers on the screen. I tell you what, man, EA Sports, they're just digging at the Gophers every chance they get. Who is making these videos? What evil badger, what evil hot guy is making these videos? That's all I gotta say. Holy smokes. Holy smokes. Anyway, let me get to your phone calls. We got other news to cover, but let's get to the phone calls. Seven six three 260-1333 763-260-1333. A Michigan guy's near the top and helping making those decisions. They're killing me, man. They're killing me.
Call from
Evil Space Badger.
The floor is yours. Let it rip.
Hey, Greg.
Yeah, how you doing, sir?
Doing good, Greg. Doing good. It's Ryan, but you probably guessed that. But
Yes, yeah.
You know, I think it's just important to realize that things have changed and things have been all over the place. But I think people need to realize that we're kind of in the bidding, how should we say this, the courting stage. And all the interested parties, Greg, whether it's ESPN, the SEC, Fox, the Big Ten, and the Big 12 to a lesser extent, everyone's going to make their bid for what they hope it's going to make their pitch for what they hope the end result will be. That doesn't mean that that's a foreordained, destined outcome. Right now, ESPN's probably making its pitch, or wants to make its pitch by making something as enticing as possible for FSU, to be in the SEC. And ESPN has to win over SEC presence. They have to win over FSU, obviously. That doesn't mean anyone's going to accept it. It just means that naturally that ESPN is going to, make its best, proposal or offer it can, and FSU is going to do what it thinks is best. Some of you are caught up in this weird conspiracy world where you think that there's some grand master plan where you have a cadre of people locked in a smoke-filled room dictating everything, and that's just not how reality is. It's not how it is in business, and it's not how it is in real life. And the reality is people make offers, they make bids, they make pitches all the time. Minds change, decisions have to be, made, compromises are made. Yes, university presidents make compromises. Yes, they have their picks of what they want and what they don't want. And, we have a whole bunch of negotiating going back and forth and everything that's happening. And, I wouldn't be surprised, Greg, if this changed another 180 degrees 2 months from now. So I think the bombshell might be ESPN. I don't think it's a settlement, Greg. I think the bombshell is ESPN will announce that they're not going to renew the option. That's the bombshell.
Well, I
don't think there's going to be a settlement. Not in July, Greg.
That can't be the bombshell that Josh Pate is referring to, though. So Why not? Because it puts realignment. It puts realignment on schedule. Most realignment has happened 2-3 years before the actual move. Well,
and we're in that window right now.
Because in my opinion, Josh Pate was saying, again, we're going back to the porridge is too cold, the porridge is too hot, right? The porridge is too cold on that one. In other words, Josh Pate says that I don't know all the details, and I don't think they know all the details yet. Just saying that they're not going to they're not going to continue with distributing ACC's content beyond 2027. There's not a whole lot of details in that story. This story's got to have some, not too much, not too little, ingredients, details. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but Greg, my counter to that is actually it's to 2026 because the second part of the option starts in the fall of 2027, July of 2027 to 2036. So you're talking about 24, 25, and the 26 season. So basically, that would be a bombshell because the minute that was announced, you're going to start seeing teams all of a sudden, if they're not already, taking sides and banding together and doing what they can to protect their interest. And those alliances may change, they may shift. It's going to be all over the place. But I just kind of, I find it very hard to believe that there's going to be a settlement in this month in July. There's just nothing in the air that dictates that. And I think that, what would make it happen would basically ESPN saying we're not renewing because all of a sudden all those schools will then have to start making their decision on what to do because they're not going to get everybody to sign on the same page for a new media deal.
You know what?
So,
and that okay. That all of that makes sense, right? It's all logical. I'm with you. Except I'm not with you. Because
that's fair, and I respect your
no, hold on.
That's
just
fine.
Because I'm what I'm talking about is what Josh Pate said. I'm tying it back with and Josh Pate said this was a legal guy, not a media guy, a legal guy, and not all the details have been are he doesn't think it's all done yet. Not everybody. No, it's to me what Josh Pate is sitting on is a story. It's got to be bigger than ESPN has declined the option of carrying ACC beyond 2027. It's got to be more involved. That's what I'm saying. Else, Josh Pate's comments don't make sense, in my opinion.
Yeah, but the counter to that, though, if ESPN decides not to renew the option, there are legal implications because the Wake Forest and the Boston colleges and Syracuse's might say, well, FSU tampered with this, they caused this, and there are legal implications to that. And at the end of the day, like I've said a billion times before on the show, SMU, Cal, and Stanford, yes, they're members, but they're not party to all of this in the sense that they haven't really. I'm not sure that they would be, based on their entry agreement, I'm not sure they would be eligible for any settlement money is my guess. I don't know the details. Maybe they would be. I don't know. But at the end of the day, if ESPN says, okay, we're going to park four schools, whoever they are, whoever the conferences accept, go to the Big 12, go to the SEC, two go to the Big 10. And at the end of the day, you're left with 5 schools outside of Notre Dame, but 4 schools really that you need to provide for. And maybe that's where you get an element of some sort of cash settlement to make those guys whole or happy. But I think this can all roll into the essence that I think it's going to be, other than that, to avoid all the market allocation stuff and allow free agents to kind of make their play and do what they need to do. I think that they're going to sort of, they have to still have some legal cover on that. So, I would argue the extension of the option multiple times before the rumblings of FSU and Clemson leaving would be independent of that. But, Wake Forest and BC are still going to make that case. And so, I certainly think you're going to have a legal element to it. So, we can, I understand people have different debates on that, but I don't think you're going to see a major settlement in July. I just don't think there's anything realistically pointing to that. There might be, maybe that's an early thing, but I think July, just given everything that's going on right now and the battles, if there was a settlement coming down, you would see FSU telling Pam Bodie to pipe up or to pipe down and shut up. in Florida. You wouldn't see the push to get those media documents pushed out in the open if there was a settlement nearby.
Okay, we're going to have to get to another caller, Ryan.
Oh, that's fine. I'm done, Greg.
You make a lot of sense, but just keep in mind, Josh Pate said, we don't know the timetable is, and not all the details is done. So it's like this is a possible booming story, but it ain't done yet. So you wouldn't want to stop pushing in the courts until this was all done. So
yeah, but that would tell me that would then tell me that you're not going to see something in July because we're in July.
All right.
All right. Take care,
Beautiful.
Greg.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Great call. Again, it's a fascinating topic because the walking geek. Hold on, everybody.
Call from
Immaculate.
Immaculate. Can you hold on for a second?
Sure.
I
Go for
appreciate it. Just I gotta get caught up here. A lot of great comments and stuff. The walking geek. If ESPN announced they weren't renewing, Fox suddenly has all the power. Not happening. Crab cakes in football. Thank you so much for your super chat. Florida State just made the Big Ten fans look like fools. Don't quite understand that one, but I know that I am a Gopher fan and I am a fool, but I'm not a Big Ten fan. So anyway, Crab Cakes in Football, thank you for your super chat. I appreciate it. Kerry Gold Knowles, Mr. Seminole, thank you so much for your generosity once again. The last time all was even, and Florida State played on an even playing field because of their great brand. Florida State finished no worse than number 4 in the country 14 years in a row. Thank you, Kerry Gold Knowles. Thank you for your super chat, your generosity. Before we get to Immaculate, I'm Josh Pate, I think he used too much description for this to be just a simple, like a real simple story. But I don't think it's going to be like this overwhelming, complete demolition job because, or everything's been figured out. I don't think it's that big a story. And people have said that the North Carolina piece, it's got to be somewhere in the middle. It's got to be somewhere where it has a whole lot of stuff going on. We don't know all the details. Not any one person has all the details. That's what Pate said. It's going to affect more than Florida State. I think it's a settlement. I think that's what Pate is talking about. Nothing more than that, nothing less than that. I could be wrong. But there's everybody that I've talked to here in the last yesterday, some of them in the industry thinks that's what Pate is referring to, which would be a huge story, no question about it. Immaculate, thank you for your patience. What do you think? Am I babbling? Am I incoherent? Am I too upset about the Gophers being disrespected by EA Sports again for me to make sense? The floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, real quick about that EA thing. That's funny. It was a little while back. Some guys were complaining about how Ohio State was being portrayed in some of those videos, and someone did a little deep dive of one of the higher-up creative directors on it, and he's a Michigan guy. So I know there's people don't realize it, but there's a little bit of a rivalry between Michigan and Minnesota.
Oh, yeah.
I think y'all took a little shot on that one because Ohio State doesn't get any love in those trailers. So
no.
He seems to have a pretty strong creative touch on what they're putting in. So just take that with a grain of salt, but it's funny. In terms of what you're saying about Pate, that's pretty much what I'm calling in on. I think I'm in agreement kind of with what Ryan is saying, and I'm going to say I do think he's talking about a settlement. I do think he's in conversation with some attorneys and the legal folks involved in the settlement, but where I think we differ is we're talking about two different settlements. I think you're talking about an ACC thing, and I think he's talking to people in the bigger picture with the NCAA stuff. Because I know a lot of people probably don't remember because it just didn't stick out to very many, but first time he really delved into all this future stuff, he was talking about conference tournaments.
Are you talking about Josh Pate?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't mean to cut you off, but again, he referenced this whole glass thing shaking and everything. He says this is realignment news. He's not talking about. That's how he is. That's what this glass shaking. He said this is. He titled it realignment news in July. So. But
he also said the people that he's talking to don't really care who ends up where or anything about the realignment situation. Because, and what I'm getting to is that big NCAA settlement involves governance and involves a lot of things that are going to start to set dominoes in motion. And one of those dominoes, my personal belief, is that realignment can then happen. Like I think that we need to get that settlement certified that has those governance details in it. Until that gets certified, that judge might say some of that's not constitutional and can't even be installed. And I think NLRB is waiting to see what comes of that. So without the decisions on USC and Dartmouth, that can affect what's going to happen with the ACC in there. 7, 8? I don't know how many private schools. I mean, it's the largest collection of private schools in the major conferences. So I do think that what's going on up there is going to affect what happens at the ACC. And once again, I could be wrong and you could be right. It's just going back a little bit further than just these latest comments of Josh, it kind of leads me to believe he cares more about the bigger picture, and that's kind of folks he's talking to, because he was really starting to get some in-depth information before we even knew that governance was in this settlement deal. He was talking about conference playoffs, conference tournaments, conference postseason. That's what that governance is for. They can't do that without writing new rules, and they have not been able to do that because the NCAA governance system with all the committees and whatnot has been blocking that. So that's why I say that. And once again, I could be wrong, you could be right. You might know a whole lot more about it than I do. But it's just from paying attention to what he's been saying, not just here in the past couple of days, but over the past few weeks, I think he's more in connection with the people in the big picture. And when he talks about the ACC, I think he just thinks that's going to be the first one that has some effect because of the big picture, because they are. That's where everyone's looking, right? That's not a huge leap. Big Ten's looking there, SEC is looking there, Big 12's looking there. Everyone's looking there. That's the next realignment domino. I just don't think that's the next domino, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you agree.
Yeah, yes. And all the NLRB and all the decisions made on all that would affect greatly the ability for, or even look at it from Wake Forest perspective, or even Duke's perspective. It would be hard for them to agree on commit to any
even just a settlement number.
Well,
you don't know what costs are going to be. You don't know what are you going to be able to do to affect this in the future.
I mean, you bring up a good point. They might get brows beat in a settlement number, but they won't commit to a complete final result of a demolition, because for all the points that you stated. And maybe they would settle on a number. And maybe maybe that is one of the things that, would hold it back from there to be a settlement, for there to be an announcement of a settlement. Josh Pate is referring to something.
Yep.
Now he could be completely wrong, but if he's right, he's referring to something, and he did make it. This is realignment news.
Yep.
So again, as we try to parse his words and everything, I don't. Again, a lot of people disagree with me. There's somebody in the chat who said this is about Florida State saying bye, we're out. Man, I gotta think. I'm trying to find that comment here. I gotta think it's more than that. Just the way Josh Pate described this story, it can't be just we're gone, we're out.
Yeah, I like I said, by knowing what's happening up higher, you can start to piece together what's happening down below. And what I mean by that is, I don't think he's just talking about Florida State. Like that's not where his focus is. That's not where he would be concerned. He's generally, when I watch him, he's most concerned about the big picture. What's going to happen to college football in general? He's not focused in hardly ever on any, where's this school going? So when I see him talk about what Florida State's going to do, I think he's doing that from a perspective of this other stuff happening, and then that becomes one of the dominoes. I could be wrong too, but like I said, he was talking about things that are going to have to do with governance before we even knew that the settlement talk was happening and that governance was part of it. So
true.
He had some insight there.
True, but I'm focusing on what he said in his last update.
Mm-hmm.
And his last update was realignment news. Lots of details. Florida State is the face of it, but there are going to be other schools involved in the story. So I'm just focusing on that, trying to decipher what he's saying on that. I know Josh Pate has a history of talking about all these other bigger issues. I'm just trying to decipher what he meant by what he said on his last live show.
Yeah, and that'd be my final thing I'll say on that is, I think he's saying that is coming as soon as we get this. Look, all we need is that judge certify that settlement. That certifies all those governance changes. Once that gets into place, these schools, I wouldn't be surprised if we find out, just like we found out 8 months later, the settlement talks have been going on the whole time for the NCAA, that these settlement talks have already kind of been happening, and we got a little window into that in one of those court hearings where the Florida State attorney referred to it, and the ACC attorneys were like, well, we don't want this on the record, but they've already had some kind of talks. Now, I don't know how far that's went, but they could maybe already have some type of a structure in place. They're just waiting on this too. And maybe that's what he's referring to, is that once these dominoes start to fall, that can fall into place quicker than maybe any of us realize, because we just don't have that information. We don't know how much has already been talked about, negotiated, compromised on. And it's just a matter of folks saying, okay, now we're ready. Now we know. I remember Notre Dame just had a complaint filed on them to the NLRB too. And they might be the most major player in all of this. And I know a lot of people aren't going to want to admit that.
Well, they are.
Kind of much.
They are.
But
yeah.
Yeah, because there's a lot connected to them. Like, you got the big interest in them, you've got privates interested in them, you've got them and Stanford seemingly working together hand in hand. We'll see. That's just my opinion. I just think that Josh Pate's connected a little bit higher than just the ACC level on this, and I think he's seeing what's coming even sooner than the ACC thing. So I'll let you go at that. I'm kind of curious to see what folks say about that, but just wanted to give my 2 cents on that.
You got it. Appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Immaculate. Great call by Immaculate Mr. Hawkeye.
Call from
Chris Kenny.
Chris, can you hold on for a second?
Sure.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Rock and Rant, Mr. Hurricane in the chat room says, it was clear to me it was beyond Clemson and Florida State. Yeah, I agree. Now, again, I'm maybe maybe I'm being too focused here, but but that's what I want to do right now. I'm focusing, and people I'm talking to are focusing on what Josh Pate said in his last live show. He said this is realignment news. A bomb may go off in July. He doesn't know the timing of it, doesn't know all the details, got legal people saying. But what Rock and Rant, which I believe he's referring to, is Josh Pate said this is more about Florida State. They're the face of it. That's what Josh Pate said. And he says Florida State and other schools, not an other school, not Florida State and Clemson. He said that really out, like he didn't hold back on that. So I'm taking it from Josh Pate, what he said, what he believes to be true, and he's being guided. He says he's being guided by somebody on this. So to me, it's not, again, I'm trying to thread the needle here. I think that's the phrase I've been looking for. Threading the needle. I think whatever this pops is going to be more than Florida State saying, we're gone, bye, we're out of here. But I think it stops short of, boy, everything is, there's a demolition and everything's been decided because of the North Carolina piece. People believe we would know, there would be hints, there'd be something we could see about North Carolina and the Board of Governors and them, giving North Carolina to be in this demolition, and they don't think a demolition would happen without North Carolina. So I don't think it's this monster. All these are big stories. I don't think it's this monster story, and I don't think it's just Florida State saying bye. We don't have our grant of rights yet, but bye, we're gone, and we'll continue to battle you in the courts. Not what Josh Pate is referring to. That's what I think. But, of course I could be wrong. Rick Kenny, you're on the line. Thanks for calling. The floor is yours. Kenny, can you hold on one more second?
Yeah, sure.
I do apologize.
Chris Kenny,
Marcus Williams, that market allocation, ESPN can't get involved. Again, one of the reasons why I think it's a settlement. And then the next step to where ESPN can't be considered being tampering involved. But unofficially, maybe some relationships are going to be the bridge is going to be built back up. But Marcus Williams, I do agree with you. Helmer Hennison, what is the nature of the relationship between Notre Dame and UNC? I think it's probably a real good one. Helmer Hennison, thank you for your super chat. I do appreciate your generosity. The question is, what are the relationships between Notre Dame and the other ACC schools, and what is the relationship between UNC and the other ACC schools? Kenny, now you've got your time, as much time as you want, because I have been not good with you. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Sure, Greg. No, that last comment I think was well timed because it was what I was going to ask, and I don't really have a comment. It really is it is a question. Like, I understand, and we talked about this when you read that letter from the Florida State money perch insider about a quick settlement, and I can understand the reasons why the ACC schools would take a quick settlement, why they all would. The lowest tier schools want as much money as quickly as possible, and I think you get the highest price when you do it quickly. And I could understand why the other schools that, have a puncher's chance of going someplace else would want a quick deal because at a high price, because I think, again, that sets the ceiling. I don't think it sets the floor for all the reasons that have been long discussed on the show. But what I don't understand is how ESPN has any motivation or interest to orchestrate this the way some people are suggesting. So I'm not even talking about the legal liability they'd be taking on with market allocation, this or that. I mean, they really would be sowing the ACC's demise if they were to do that, because if Florida State and Clemson leave, and let's say, it's just those two to start, they start facilitating their exit to the SEC, the Big Ten might be deliberate, they might be cautious, but they're not going to be stationary. At that point, they're going to make a full court press on every member of the ACC they may want to recruit. And if ESPN is involved in initiating that, who is to say that they're going to get to keep everything that they currently have locked in for quite a number of years at a very low price? That part doesn't compute to me. I could understand why a settlement that the ACC and Florida State or the ACC and Clemson enter into independently could happen, and ESPN doesn't really have a say in that. They sort of have to react to it, and I think the way that they would react to it is by not renewing that deal or renewing it at a much lower rate with whatever's kind of hanging around. But for them to be a part of a settlement, facilitating some kind of exits, it would necessarily mean, right, that the bottom tier schools would have to agree to whatever that settlement is, right? Boston College and Syracuse and Wake Forest have to be made whole. And so what is ESPN going to give them, right? If ESPN is sitting in the chair helping to maneuver this, what could ESPN possibly promise them that would make any sense? I don't think there is anything, right? Because ESPN knows that if those 2 or 3 or 4 schools leave, they're not going to be the only 2 or 3 that are going to leave. Notre Dame is going to go. Miami is going to go. Who knows what happens with State, Virginia Tech? Who knows what happens with Duke or even Louisville? So I don't understand where I can see ESPN sitting there and saying, okay, well, we'll make the best of a bad situation. But I don't understand the business incentive they have to play an active role in any of this. I think that the SEC is a strong property. It will remain a strong property even if every single ACC school leaves and goes somewhere else that's not on an ESPN network. So what is the point of them blowing up a very favorable contract? And then what is it they could possibly do to satisfy the bottom feeders that they couldn't just get for free, basically, by sitting it out?
Okay. Great questions. I don't know the answer, but let's pretend something. Okay.
I'm going to hang up and listen, though, okay?
Okay, got it. All right.
Bye.
Appreciate it. It's a great question. Great question. Of course, I don't have the answer. I am going to just kind of do a little pretend thing here. Just maybe flush it out a little bit. Marcus Williams, when competitors divide a market in which they can compete into sections in which one or more competitors decline to compete in favor of others, market allocation. Marcus Williams, early peak member for the 5th month. Holy smokes. Thank you so much, Williams. Mr. Williams, for becoming a member for 5 months. You are once again hereby knighted, cloak, and dagger. Thank you so very much. I do appreciate it. Before I get into my pretend, Ryan Thomas's immaculate is correct. The terrain has to be set for there to be any settlement, for anybody to agree on anything. Ryan Thomas is incorrect, and settlement is what to do with cheese on stadium. Helmer Henderson, how many yards will Minnesota's running back run for 2024? If Darius Taylor stays healthy, about 1,500. About 1,500. Darius Taylor is the name that are going to be on the lips of all of you. Back to back to back Big Ten freshman of the year last year. He's an absolute beast. Look out. North Carolina, look out. August 29th. Buckle up. Brace for impact. This is what Kenny with a great phone call. This is, we're just pretending here. I don't know.
Call from
Jay Ryan.
Jay Ryan, can you just hold on for a moment?
Yes, sir.
I just want to go through a scenario. We're just pretending here. And then we'll get to you, sir. Phillips, Commissioner Phillips has said in private, he's been talking about with ESPN. He's been talking to ESPN about, this look-in, this media rights, this working on things. That's how Jim Phillips explained it. And ESPN is probably giving Phillips a bunch of options. And Phillips has gone to schools in his conference where he knows they're going to be greatly affected if some schools leave. And he's gone to a Wake Forest. He's gone to a Boston College. He's gone to a Syracuse, Pittsburgh, and others and said, this is the media deal we've currently got. This is the media deal that we could have if schools leave. You see that drop in there? Well, this is the money that we could get with schools leaving. ESPN is willing to pay this much for this composition of a conference, this much for this composition of the conference, this much for this composition of the conference. Phillips and ESPN can talk like that. That's what you do. And then of course the money, the exit fee and Gore money comes in and hopefully fills up the gaps. This is basically what you're going to get with this scenario, this scenario, this scenario, this scenario. And if we settle with Florida State and Clemson, these particular two schools that have gone to the courts, then this is the number that if they give us, you're still made whole in the years ahead, and ESPN would, they're going to agree to pay this. And if other schools leave, they're going to have to pay X amount of money to keep you still whole. And this is how we reach a settlement. I have no idea if that's going on. And I have no idea if that's what Josh Pate is saying. I just happen to think that crazy scenario actually fits every word that Josh Pate choose to use during his discussion on why the glass of water was shaken. Florida State just saying, bye, we're leaving, that doesn't quite fit what Josh Pate was saying. And the other scenario where everything is decided goes into market allocation, goes into things that I don't think are happening, according to what Josh Pate is telling us. Ryan, I forget, what was your first name?
Jay.
Jay Ryan, I apologize. Thank you for your patience. The floor is yours.
So I think one of the problems everybody has right now is they're so hyper-focused with what's directly in front of their face that everyone's kind of forgetting the entire picture. And everyone keeps talking about, Florida State and Clemson needing, to make the ACC whole. Well, we don't know what that means exactly. And, if ESPN does not pick up that option by February 1st, there's nothing to make whole. The deal ends when it's supposed to end. So, when the ACC added these three schools, they made sure to guarantee their money to at least 2027. So there's nothing to make whole. If the deal truly went to 2036, there wouldn't be a look-in. There wouldn't be, that's the verbiage they want to use as a look-in. But when you read, there's three different court cases where the AG, Clemson, and Florida State have cited The first sentence of Section 14.1 of the agreement is hereby amended such that ESPN may exercise the extension option by providing written notice to the conference no later than February 1st, 2025. So there's nothing to be made whole if they're negotiating. If the deal was good to go, they would have never amended it to begin with to push the date back. So we already know ESPN doesn't want it. If they wanted it, they would do something. If they're renegotiating, then there's a problem. And that problem is not based on Florida State or Clemson having filed suit back in December. This thing should have been picked up a couple years ago. So why wasn't it?
You know what? And I don't have the answer to that question. I've never had the answer to that question. Why didn't ESPN pick up that option in 2021 when the first deadline, or 2022 or 23? It's a great question. It's the go ahead though. Keep going with it, but because that is an incredibly important question, which I don't have the answer to. Which leads to you going what? What do you think then?
I'll be honest with you. I don't know. I don't see any reason to do anything until February 1st, because ESPN, if they haven't done so already, they're not going to with all this, question marks up in the air. So, and a lot of people keep saying, oh, ESPN can't get involved because it's tampering or this and that and the other. And it's like, well, isn't that exactly what they did with Texas and OU? And the Big 12 came back talking tough, but they didn't do anything about it.
Well, but the grant of rights was going to end in a few years. This is a little bit different, right? This is legally different.
That's the same case here, because the ACC grant of rights, it exists for this specific ESPN deal. So if the deal is over, then it doesn't matter. And the timing is exactly the same as it was for Texas and OU with 2 years left. The timing's exactly the same. And that's what leads me to believe that worst case scenario, they're in till 2027, and then they can go wherever they want to. So I don't understand, paying a big amount of money to leave early because
okay. All right, but there is, I get what you're saying. This is a great phone call. I get what you're saying. Why hasn't ESPN picked it up? Why? But there is still the possibility that ESPN is going to pick up the option, right? Even though they haven't announced it yet. They could pick it up all the way to 2036. They have that leverage. And the other schools not knowing for sure if they're going to pick it up or not pick it up, that is a leverage that ACC can use. Like, Jim Phillips is probably telling everybody, yeah, we're going to have a contract in 2036. Anyways, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so again, the only group with the leverage is ESPN, and I just, if the deal is as bad as everybody thinks it is, and it's so cheap, it should have been picked up years ago. And the fact that it hasn't tells you that there's a problem. And if it's why, it was kind of like everybody was on. All these schools were going to get together and dissolve the conference. And I'm thinking, well, if it was going to happen, I don't think they're going to wait till the day before it happens.
Yeah.
Right? Like it doesn't make sense. But why do you need the drama? Right?
Yeah. Why do you think ESPN hasn't announced yet that they're going to drop it? The option.
I think they're making longer term decisions for their stuff, because we know for a fact that Clemson and Florida State is about 35% of the ACC's value up front. Okay, so if that's the case, what can they renegotiate to? Obviously, a lot lower.
Yep.
So I don't see, to me, and I'll be quite frank. Let's play the other side of the coin. If I'm the ACC, I'm hoping that ESPN doesn't pick up the deal because of Turner Sports and how much money they're spending on programming. With the basketball properties that the ACC has, they can actually use that as leverage against contract their basketball stuff. So I don't know. All I'm saying is I don't think these two. I think ESPN has taken advantage of the ACC, and they should be trying something else. And I think the SEC's made a big mistake, having ESPN as their only TV carrier now. If you look at what the Big Ten's been doing and how, and even the Big 12 grant of rights reads better because there are multiple TV properties. And it's not, we exist for one contract. The language is completely different, but we were told for what, like 10 years that they were a carbon copy, and they're just not. And I just think, things, it's got to dissolve to make it better either way.
So what do you think? What do you think ultimately Josh Pate's information is leading us to if whatever he thinks is going to happen happens? What scenario do you see playing out in the month of July, a little bit after July?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Just being honest, I don't know. If you would have asked me last year, I thought they were going to file to get out of the ACC last year, like a lot of Florida State fans did. And then, August 15th, and that's when they were making all of the all the meetings that were happening, and that they were showing how this isn't working, and we thought for sure it was going to happen then, and then it didn't. And again, I just don't think that paying a big number to get out early makes any sense, especially because even if they get out this month, they're not going anywhere for at least 2 years. So what does it matter to wait a few more months?
What do you mean? What do you mean when you say if they get out now, they're not going anywhere for a couple years?
Well, obviously they're going to play in the ACC this year. They're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So that's really what I mean. And so just looking at it from that perspective, if they don't say anything before August 15th, and I can't remember if it's like a I don't know if they have to play 2025 or 2026. I don't remember how.
You're breaking up, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you've been breaking up for quite a while here. I'm going to let you go, sir. Yeah, he's broken up. Great call. I'm sorry, I had to let you go. Been breaking up a little bit through the phone call, but we got what you were saying. Great phone call. Thank you so much.
Call from
Crab Cakes and Football.
Crab Cakes and Football. Mr. Terrapin is on the line. The floor is yours. How you doing, sir?
I wanted to explain what my earlier
Okay.
chat
By the
was,
way,
and
let me
plus
get
give
to
you-
another. Can you hold on? I want to get to Mo
Yeah,
Envision's
go ahead.
super chat. Pate could say a legal guide to obfuscate his true source, which could be anybody. Don't burn your sources. Pate, Mo Envision thinks that this might not be a legal guide given the information to Pate. Could be. Mo Envision, Mr. Buckeye, he thinks on a whole different level than a Golden Gopher. Thank you. Go ahead, Crab Cakes and Football. Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, one of the problems of doing super chats is you have limited characters, so
Yep.
trying to say something doesn't work sometimes.
Yeah, no problem. Go ahead.
No, what I was saying was I respect the heck out of Florida State. They're not my favorite team. I'm a Maryland Terrapin fan, but I've always had respect for them, and to see what they're going through and everything after they got screwed over and whatnot with the college football and championship and the whole entire dynamic there, knowing that ESPN was behind it, then all this chalk and everybody kept saying, you know what, FSU to the Big Ten, I started buying into the hype. So that's partly my fault. So I'm like, okay, FSU to the Big Ten, this is going to be cool, reunite with them a little bit. And then now here comes ESPN and most likely SEC chomping away. They don't want to have this happen. So I'm thinking to myself, why would FSU trust ESPN after everything that they've just gone through? And then on top of that, knowing that they got screwed over and everything else for the college football playoff, then on top of that, they're going to give up an opportunity unless they decided to invite Miami to be the only state recruiting in the Big Ten for Florida, bringing Florida with them, being the only school from Florida. That would be a lot of power that they gave up if they decide just to be another team in the SEC. Yeah. And I know there's a lot of side sports, baseball, basketball, that would benefit from staying locally. So I get that point. But at the same time, I think that the national brand aspect of Florida State is so huge. I really think they're doing themselves a disservice if they were to accept anything from ESPN. Yes, I get it. They're all local. Everybody would be 100-mile drive here, 200-mile drive there. But I think they would be missing out on a big piece of a national concept if they were to go to Seattle, Los Angeles,
All right, let's pretend. Let's do a scenario, okay?
All right.
You are the president of Florida State University, okay?
All right.
You reach a settlement. You pay out. Let's just throw out a number. You paid out $265 million. Now it's time for you to negotiate your future with your options, the SEC and the Big Ten. And it's you and Clemson who have signed the settlement papers. Not anybody else. Nobody else is in court. And you're talking to Big Ten and the SEC. And now North Carolina, they have to gather themselves. They have to figure out how to get through and negotiate. And Miami and maybe some other schools. But because of the settlement, and within the settlement, Clemson and Florida State can now talk with the Big Ten and the SEC. Florida State talks to the Big Ten. Now, we're just pretending here, ladies and gentlemen. Florida State talks to the Big Ten, and it's like, well, Big Ten's like, oh, yeah, we're interested. We're definitely interested. Of course we are. Let's talk about what you need to do and what we can, blah, 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 back and forth. And the Big Ten talks with Clemson. Now, Clemson and Florida State talks with the SEC. SEC says, of course we're interested in you guys. Florida State, Clemson, blah, blah, blah. Florida State comes back and talks with the Big Ten. And the Big Ten says, yeah, we're still interested in you. Of course we are. We know you're talking with the SEC. But the Big Ten has decided at this time, look, the Florida State Clemson option isn't going to work. We're looking when we add. We're going to want to add two schools together. This is what we've been doing. We're looking at it. We need for all the options to appear before us before we make our final commitments. But we're still interested, Florida State. We're still interested, Mr. President, crab cakes and football, Florida State. We're still interested in you. But we're not quite there yet. And then you go back to the SEC, and the SEC says, here's our pro rata deal. Here it is, Florida State and Clemson. Here it is. Now, what do? The bird in the hand is worth a lot more than it is in the bush. What do? Do you wait for the Big Ten? Do you wait for other options? Or do you take the SEC deal and you become a member of a Power 2 conference? Your decision.
Now you just put Clemson into it, so Clemson's never been a Big Ten fit. So I never really bought the Clemson thing. I tried to flirt with it a little bit. I just could never get myself to believe it. So if they're joined at the hip and FSU's bringing Clemson along,
they're not joined
like
at the hip. They're not joined at the hip.
It sounds like they are.
Huh?
You made it sound like they are.
No. Well, no. What I'm saying is the Big Ten is saying we're not willing to move. We're not willing to do any commitments. Florida State and the Big Ten's reasoning is because there's not the combination of schools that they're willing to make they're waiting for the other options to open up. They're waiting to see what Notre Dame does. They're waiting to see what North Carolina does. But what if Clemson says, yeah, we'll take you, Florida State, right now? And they're willing to take Clemson right away. Forget about the Clemson aspect of it if that's confusing you. Florida State, the Big Ten says, we're going to wait. We're very interested in you, but we got to wait a little bit longer. And the SEC saying, we'll take you today. What do you do?
Well, in that case, I can understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Well, why not the Big Ten or the SEC? I mean, SEC's looking for team number 17, and Big Ten's looking for team number 19. Mm-hmm. I mean, so you're still going to have more shoes to fill after that to get to 20 and to get to 18. So why not just take Clemson, SEC, and take FSU, Big Ten? That would be you're still going to have to get that 20th team and the other 3 teams to fill out the 20 for the SEC. So there's still the North Carolinas, the Virginias, the Miamis, the Georgia Techs, whoever else you deem fit for that 20th spot available. So it doesn't shut the door on all expansion. You just filled one more spot. Now you wait for the other ones to come available. And let's just say it's a Georgia Tech. I like the Immaculate's idea from a couple months back when he said Georgia Tech. You know, Georgia Tech gets you into the Georgia market. You're going up against Georgia, but nonetheless, you get Georgia market, Atlanta, that's a pretty big one. They become the 20th team. Now, there's your southern wing, Florida State and Georgia Tech. You know, leave Miami for the Big 12 or whoever else, whatever. And you lose, and I'm assuming we lose out on UNC and Virginia. So you lose out on those. But if they become available and any of them say yes, you take them over Georgia Tech, by the way. Throw that in there. But, I mean, you're only – normally it's done in pairs, granted. But doesn't mean it has to be done in pairs.
No,
you can go ahead and –
yeah. It's normally done in pairs because normally the pairs help each other out to grease the skids, to get all the interest in a conference to satisfy all the interest. Now, there's going to be people in the chat, and of course I can understand Florida State Seminole fans believe in this, and probably most people and everywhere else saying that Florida State alone would satisfy all the interest of the Big Ten. And that is where I don't think...
Yeah.
I think there's going to have to be more massaging of everybody. And I think the Big Ten is going to want to wait to make sure that everybody's interest... That is what I'm trying to say to everybody. I don't think the Big Ten is going to rush in and make a deal with the Florida State and Clemson. It doesn't mean they don't want Florida State. It just means that they might have to the discussions might have to get more involved. The SEC might say, here it is, man, pro rata, you're cut. You satisfy everything right away. Bam, let's come on. And then that's when Florida State would have to make a decision.
All right. Well,
all right.
You left me something to think about because,
yeah.
It does. I could see your point of view as well, but I'm looking at what FSU would give up just moving too quickly. If they move too quickly and jump to the SEC, they're going to make a lot of people happy. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I think they're going to be leaving so much more on the table when it's all said and done. My personal opinion, but all right, man.
Appreciate the call, sir. Thank you.
No problem.
Call from
Nitwit.
Nitwit, can you hold on for one moment, please?
Sure.
I just want to get to this comment by Daniel Gorby. Bring in Notre Dame with Florida State. Okay, that would work, right? That would work in the essence of filling the interest of satisfying all the interests. Here is the question I have for Daniel and everybody else in the chat. And I brought this up. I don't think it was on the last live show, but maybe the live show previous to that one. But I looked straight into the camera and I said, if I could give Florida State any advice, it's about relationships. Remember that, guys, when I looked into the camera? So, sure, Notre Dame and Florida State would satisfy the interests of the Big Ten. That works. And my advice would be Florida State, your relationships with Notre Dame, your relationships with North Carolina, in your relationships with the Big Ten. And I'm sure they've been doing it. I'm just telling you what advice I would give Florida State. But I'm sure they've been doing it anyways. The relationships with Notre Dame, with North Carolina, Big Ten presidents, athletic directors, I'm sure that's what they've been focusing on because that might be the tipping point of Florida State becoming a Big Ten member or not. Notre Dame and Florida State on paper works. Notre Dame and Florida State, relationship-wise, is that something Notre Dame would want to do? That's what Florida State has to work on. That's how to be able to answer that comment by Daniel Gorby. Nitwit, the floor is yours. Thank you for your patience.
Hi, Greg. I hope everybody has a great, blessed 4th of July holiday. Calling in, just want to call in, celebrating. Looks like Penn State might have a top 10 recruiting class, so the future's looking bright in 2025.
Yeah.
Also looking forward to still have my hopes up that maybe Penn State can get to a Big Ten championship game this year, and that would be great. Wanted to go through some of the things that were mentioned on the call before, and Immaculate brought some of these up, and I think I have called in before some of my contacts at Penn State about the instability right now in college football and how that's putting some guards up at the college level in the sense of if you think about it, you have NIL that still hasn't been worked out. Now you have the possibility of paying players, which still hasn't been worked out. How many colleges are going to be comfortable with doing that? Or how many of them have the ability to do that? How's that going to impact other sports, which you know from covering college sports?
Yep.
Some colleges value those other sports more or less. You know what I mean? So I think part of the drip in Josh Pate's thing is that there is in the future, near future, there's going to be something that is going to shake the foundation of college sports, and it's coming soon. And it's not just this is not just about Florida State or the ACC. So that's how I'm reading it. Whether it be an NB, the National Labor Relations Board's decision or some other thing. Like, once you get into the realm of no one's worked that out, right? No one's mentioned that. You don't have any reporters trying to figure out, hey, Wake Forest, if you have to play players, are you going to do it or not?
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know the legalese on all that, but if the conference forces you to pay players, like, what are the chances that you could remain in that conference if you don't? So all that has to be played out. I just don't believe that, which is on the bottom level. Like, I know everybody says, oh, your sources, you're hearing this. Some of us are pretty close to people in the program. I'm thinking, like I said, all of this instability has put the guards up with people, whether it be athletic directors, college administrators. These changes and this impact, and like even some people say, like I've talked to, we don't even know what a full slate of Big Ten football is going to be like right now, with the new additions coming in.
Yeah.
What I mean? Like I've heard that directly. Let's see how this plays out, even with the new schools coming in. Some of them are uncomfortable with the half share, and that's just an academic thing. You know what I mean? Would they accept more schools at half share? I've heard that. Like you got to think of the academic world, right, Greg? You're not really, like, none of us are involved in an academic world.
Yeah.
Like, those things matter, right?
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to managing athletic programs, research, development, all that stuff kind of plays into that academic world. So I just wanted to call in and kind of bring that out. I think that's how I read Josh's, like, I don't think either way, let's just say boom tomorrow, and you got on this. Boom, at the end of July, FSU's out of the ACC. Well, that's not what I think Josh, that doesn't have the impact that I think Josh is hinting to. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I don't think that is what Josh Pate is alluding to. Now, right. Vince Knoll in the chat room says that's not the same as the end game. That's true. I'm just trying to focus on, in this particular live show and the previous, trying to ascertain what Josh Pate was alluding to. And I don't think what he was alluding to was a Florida State saying, we're filing our notice of withdrawal. There is no settlement. We're leaving, because that doesn't have a whole lot of details to it. It doesn't affect more than Florida State. Josh Pate's, whatever story is in the oven, whatever Josh Pate is alluding to, I think is more involved than what you just said. Florida State saying, bye, we're leaving. That might be part of it, but there's got to be something more into it.
Right. I think that has to do with the paying of players directly. Mm-hmm. I think, and you can imagine if all of a sudden tomorrow all the schools in the Power Five have to start paying players, what impact is that going to have? You know what I mean? Like, there's some schools that be like, this isn't what we signed up for. Yeah. Obviously, Stanford would be one, right? Wake Forest, Vanderbilt.
I don't know.
It's going to. It's.
I don't. They may all. They may all do a private equity plan. Maybe everyone's going to pay the $22 million. We've already got TCU saying they're going to do it. I don't know, man. That's a whole nother conversation, and I think a grand majority of the schools are going to end up paying the $22 million. That's in the Power Four conferences.
But I think, Greg, we're at the state. You remember when Harvard and that point in history when these dramatically changes come and those schools don't adjust, there has to be a filtering out of what a power school is and what is not. And that's why I keep telling you, there needs to be a Power 3. And if the Big 12 and ACC don't understand that, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There needs more consolidation, but those two realms need to be worked out. What is your top 10 schools in these two conferences? And that's the third conference. How's that going to get worked out? I don't know. But that's what the market is dictating. That's probably what the networks want. If not, they're going to be all consolidated into two conferences. And then who knows after that? Does it get more consolidation into only 20 schools? We don't know. But at some point in time, these schools at the bottom have to figure out, am I all in or am I not? And we'll see how that plays out. But I think if we're moving to paying players, now if I just walked into some schools, you and Greg and Randy walk through schools, and we walk into the college president's office and say, hey, tomorrow you're going to have to start paying your football players such and such amount of money. That is going to cause people to lose their mind on academic campuses. Okay. So whenever that day comes, whether they're forced to buy it by a legal thing or the National Labor Relations Board says you have to pay these players, however it goes, when that day comes, you're going to have chaos. There'll be people in the school that say, why are we paying these players? They're not being treated like other players, Title IX. We're going to have to get rid of sports programs. I mean, this is I know it sounds easy to say as a solution. Well, we'll just pay players. When that day comes, college football will be forever changed. Mm-hmm. And these colleges are going to have a hard time grappling with paying football players X amount of dollars. So just want to thanks for taking my call. Can't wait. Like I said, happy 4th of July. See you later.
Got it. Appreciate it, man. Great call by Nitwit. Patrick, Baylor Bear Patrick says, Josh said teams. So we know it feels like more than just Florida State Clemson. He did. Again, I'm there's a lot of different trains of speculation that we can all hop onto. There's a lot of different stations that we can hop onto a train that is going down the tracks. What I'm again focusing on today until we get other reporting or something, what Josh Pate said. And he said a realignment news story. A bomb may go off in the month of July. That's the part I'm focusing on. I'm being told he has another live show tonight. Maybe he'll add something to it. Maybe not.
Call from
Rob.
To accept, press 1.
I'm sorry. Didn't I get the name?
It's Rob.
Roth, can you hold on 1 second, please?
Yes, sir.
And Pat, Patrick's right. Josh Pate said, hold on a second, guys. I got to move something here. Josh Pate said very clearly, this is about Florida State, whatever the story is that's in the oven. He said reporters have it in the oven. that Josh, this is about Florida State and other teams. He did not say Florida State and another team. Florida State and other teams, but Florida State is the face of it. So I don't think it's just about Florida State. I don't think the story is they're leaving. I think it's some sort of settlement, some sort of arrangement. Something was decided. I think it's a settlement. Florida State and involving some other schools or possibly some other schools. Go ahead, caller. The floor is yours. Thanks for your patience.
Oh, no problem. I was just curious, did we ever hear if the ESPN option is, as was presented by FSU or was presented by Jim Phillips? Is it, and my question is it unilateral and only ESPN has the lever, or is it a look-in more like Phillips said? I don't recall ever anyone clarifying that.
Well, I don't think anyone has clarification of it. Maybe they do. I don't. When we first heard of this option of ESPN, it was the Board of Trustees meeting on December 26, 2023. Florida State's Board of Trustees meeting. They're the ones that disclosed this to the world. And I think everybody has been scrambling, going, what the heck does this mean? Supposedly there's been an option. Supposedly Florida State, there was an option for 2021, but Phillips granted more time for ESPN to make that decision. And I guess it's February 1st, 2025 is a new deadline. But what, is it a look in, like, is it where a look in where both parties are negotiating? That's what it sounds like, according to what Jim Phillips said here recently.
I mean, full disclosure, I'm a Clemson Tiger, so I don't believe Phillips very much, but it's just, if it is like FSU presented and it is a one-person option, it just seems like it's like a three-way game of chicken. If you're ESPN, what do you want? Do you want the ACC to win? So then you can have your inventory and have a bargain through 2036. But the flip side of that, I know my buddy at Mackenzie Law says Clemson and other ACC schools, FSU, have no leverage, but I don't think that's true. If they really want out and they really know this is the future, if they announce before ESPN says anything, why would ESPN pick up that option? That there's no way they would. Right? So then these bottom ACC schools, it's over at the payday's over in 2027. And if ESPN sits still, I've kind of changed my mind on this. It's gutsy and it's a super dangerous thing. But if you announce that you're leaving, ESPN declines, it's not going to cost you $572 million to get out. You're going to have to fight it out in court. But is that worse than being stuck until 2036? I mean, I don't know. It's just like this three-way game of chicken.
Well,
but if ESPN does nothing.
If Clemson and Florida State, let's just pretend they say we're out. Well, without their grant of rights, without their ownership of their own media rights. So now they go into 2025. It's still going on in the courts. Appeal process is going on. Legally, as we sit here today, the ACC is still going to get all the revenue from any production of Clemson and Florida State's home games. Legally. They are. They just are. So, and now Clemson and Florida State aren't going to get distributed that money because they are a withdrawal member of the conference.
I guess I'm just thinking about how the media agreement versus the grant of rights, if ESPN declines it, what kind of fight does that look like to see if it ends in 2027 with no ESPN?
Okay. So let's say Clemson and Florida State leaves. Let's say they both say we're out of here. Okay. And then they think the pressure is on ESPN to decline the media agreement. Well,
Right.
I don't have a good answer on why ESPN has not said we're picking up the option now. I think Clemson. I think ESPN and Phillips are in a deep negotiations about 2027 and beyond, what it's going to look like. So I don't know if Clemson, again, you say it's a three-way game of chicken. You're right. Can Clemson and Florida State absolutely convince themselves that if they leave the conference, that ESPN will not get any arrangement with ESPN? Okay, ESPN could pick up the option, even if Clemson and Florida State both say we're out of here in the month of July. Clemson could pick up that option, still distribute Clemson and Florida State games. That money still goes to the ACC, and ESPN is still getting advertisement money when they show those big-time Florida State and Clemson games. I don't know if Florida State and Clemson puts ESPN. I don't know if Clemson and Florida State leaving the conference without the media rights really puts any more pressure on any of the other parties. You know what I'm saying? I'm not convinced.
I mean, it's just that connection between the grant of rights and the media agreement is the big unknown. But I mean, if I'm Jim Phillips and ESPN says, hey, we'll take it, we'll pick it up through 2036, and then Clemson FSU leaves, settle, whatever, he's going to turn around to ESPN, his partner now, and say, hey, we got 15 teams. We added SMU, Cal, and Stanford. Read the contract. It's like, who do you partner up with? I guess who are the two winners and the one loser? I mean, I called before. I mean, two people are going to be happy and one person's going to be really unhappy in this deal.
Yeah.
So anyway, hope you have a great 4th. Enjoy the show.
Yeah, you too. I appreciate it. A happy 4th to you, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Call again.
Yes, sir.
I mean, I get it. I get it that
Call from
BJ.
BJ, can you hold on 1 second?
Yes, sir.
I get it. I don't have an answer on the question of why ESPN has not picked up the option yet. Why they even needed to extend the deadline. If they were I don't have an answer to that. Other than maybe they wanted to renegotiate. I don't know. Maybe they wanted to add another conference game. Just because you redo the deal doesn't necessarily mean the grant of rights disappears. I don't have an answer for that, but I don't know how much you can risk by saying we're out of here when you don't have your media rights, and ESPN could turn around and say, well, I'm sorry, but we're keeping this deal. We're going to go to 2036, and we're going to pay everybody what we're paying you, and it doesn't matter if Florida State and Clemson are not part of the ACC, because according to ESPN's reading of their media rights agreement, they still own their distribution rights. Now, maybe ESPN is wrong. Maybe Clemson is right. That's all going to get decided in the courts. But again, it's going to get decided in the courts. There's going to be appeals and blah, blah, blah. And I don't know I don't know if Florida State and Clemson improves their position in the courts or in possible settlement talks by announcing they're leaving without their media rights. I think Clemson and Florida State are doing a pretty good job in the courts the way it is positioned now. And by the way, Florida State has used the argument in the courts that, look, we haven't left. We haven't left yet. We haven't left. We're still a member of this conference. And Clemson has said over and over again, we're not challenging the Gore. We just want a ruling, a summary motion, a judgment on whether if we leave the conference, whether we get our media rights back or not, based on the verbiage, the wording in the media rights agreement tied to the Gore. Caller, the floor is yours. Go ahead, BJ. Thanks for your patience.
No problem, Greg, and thanks for having me on again. So, a couple things. For one, I respectfully disagree with you on one thing about Florida State announcing they're leaving does apply pressure to ESPN. The amount of pressure is, we have no idea, but it will force ESPN into the courtroom in a full-fledged manner, I think, or at least to be more involved in this process. But I agree with you that I don't think it will work by announcing earlier, but it will apply pressure for sure.
Why? Why for sure?
Because there's a disagreement. There's a disagreement, and Florida State has made a declaratory statement and said, hey, we're leaving. Right? And so that February 25 issue has to be on the front table if it's not already on the front burner. Because that's a lot of money. Because if ESPN commits to this deal in its current state, and Florida State and Clemson ends up getting out of the deal after this February 25 date, ESPN is on the hook for a lot of money for product that may not be worth it. So, from my perspective, that it forces the decision on that hypothetical 25 February date to be of the most importance. Now, I will say this too, Greg. I think when it comes to this deal, or when it comes to this conundrum, I think ESPN and ACC has just fumbled this so badly that ESPN and ACC are in a conundrum. ACC and Jim Phillips has said since he got there that there is no look-in, right? And he has reassured the other ACC teams that this is not a this is not a look-in. We won't get less money. If it comes out to be false, I think it leaves the ACC in legal kind of with a legal issue from the teams that are left, right? They say, hey, our commissioner said that this deal was solid and we're not going to get a reduction in pay. If they do get a reduction in pay, I think the other teams have a legal argument of mismanagement. The same way FSU has a legal argument on the opposite end. So I think because Phillips said what he said publicly and on record, it leaves the ACC in a predicament. And I think because the ESPN wanted to wait and push off their commitment to the ACC, it allowed space for the Clemsons and FSU to wiggle out. Because guess what, Greg? You can't tell me that ESPN leadership did not have a firm grasp on the new ESPN deal or the new SEC deal, the new Big 12 deal, right?
Yeah.
So as an ACC guy, I know ESPN, you knew what you were going to do with these leagues, And so you put me to the back burner. So to me, the ESPN knew all along what they were doing, and they just counted on the fact that FSU and no ACC team would challenge that gore. I think because of that, they put out the narrative on all ESPN stations that you turn into 2 years ago. This ACC deal was a lock solid. I forgot what term they used. It was ironclad. It was ironclad, right?
Yep.
But 2 years later, a year and a half later, what we find out it is the far from ironclad. Right. So to me, ESPN mismanaged the whole thing with that extension. Jim Phillips never got permission to extend, and Jim Phillips jacked around with this wording, and he's gonna be legally jacked up on both ends no matter what comes out of this. The ACC and Jim Phillips is gonna be, in my opinion, is gonna be on the outside looking in because of their mismanagement. And mind you can correct me if my logic and my reasoning is incorrect, but from an outside person looking in, I just think there's been mismanagement the whole way through, and that's how we're stuck in this conundrum.
Got it. Very logical argument. Great call, BJ. I appreciate it, man.
You have a blessed day.
Beautiful. Thank you, sir. Good call. Now, VC Noel says, why would ESPN voluntarily offer more when they don't have to? To keep Florida State and Clemson, the only way they would stay is if the money was on par with the P2, and that ain't happening. I would agree. I think, again, this is speculation on my part. There is ways to increase the value of your media package. In which ESPN would enjoy and the schools would enjoy. First of all, to possibly go to 9 conference games. I don't know if ESPN would agree with that. They didn't even want to do that with the SEC. But that's one part. The other part is to increase ACC's increase the value of putting certain teams into different time slots. Again, that's probably what the Clemson Black Friday thing was about, right? ESPN is willing to pay a little bit more money, but you know what? We need a marquee Black Friday game. We need a Clemson or a Florida State to be a Black Friday game. Can't get Florida State. Let's try to get Clemson. Clemson doesn't play. I don't, because this is what the Big Ten has done. They've increased the value of so is the SEC, because there's things you can do. And for the most part.
Call from
JD.
JD, can you hold on one moment, please?
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it, sir. So, but yeah, I agree with VC no, except there are ways to squeeze out a little bit more juice out of that turnip. And then Roman Maroney says, assume Florida State tells ESPN to get bent. Florida State is a big home game. What's to stop Florida State from telling ESPN no trespassing? Well, there's a problem with that. We know that the other media partners have come to ESPN's aid during these pleadings. We don't want our trade secrets to be shown either. We don't, if Florida State leaves the ACC and they don't have their media rights, Fox is not going to be showing Florida State's home games. Fox is not going to do that with ESPN. They have so many other partnerships across sports. They're competitors. They're competitors, but there are partners. There's no way that Fox is going to show Florida State's home games so Florida State will have a decision. Our games are not played on TV at all, or we're going to stay with ESPN. If we're talking about that scenario. The media partners have come to ESPN's aid on their argument. The other conferences have also come to the ACC's aid in some other arguments in these courts. So, again, I get back to it. Florida State, sure, they can announce they're going to file a notice of withdrawal and be gone. But I just don't think that's the story that Josh Pate is alluding to, because he said Florida State and other schools. Florida State is the face of it, but there are other schools involved. I don't think this is a simple case of just Florida State saying they're gone. I'm putting my money on a settlement if what is being told to Josh Pate is true. I think that's where we're heading. JD, Mr. Seminole, thanks for calling, my brother from another mother. Let it rip, sir. What do you got to say?
How you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing just fine. I wish it would cool down a little bit down here, but hey, it's not going to be that weather pattern's not going to change for about 3 months. So it just is what it is.
Yeah.
It's tough, but anyway, man, I have so much I'd like to touch on. I'm gonna try to just condense this down. Talking about Josh Pate, Immaculate's phone call just triggered something in my mind. Do you remember some of the rumors going around a few months ago that the new CFP agreement would potentially make it easier for teams to leave the ACC? I think it was just some people talking. I think I brought it up on your show. Yeah. I think Regal Nola talked about it and so on. I think the reason the term CFP, the new revised CFP agreement, that was what was being talked about in the media. The other aspects, the all the settlements, the NLRB stuff, all of the new governance things coming in, all these changes, okay? How do we even know what's in it? And what if there's things in it that make realignment easier? It takes the liabilities, some of the liabilities away from the P2. We're trying to figure out how this would work with what limited knowledge we actually have. We don't have the full picture. So now when you talk about Josh Pate talking to a lawyer, well, that lawyer that really isn't as familiar with the individual teams, but he's familiar with the industry, would know, okay, is the judge going to sign off on it soon? Is it likely? Should we expect it should we expect it after July 4th? Because we know how it is. Most judges aren't working this week. And there's so many other aspects. So the confidence level that people have, or some of the rumors, or that Josh Pate would even talk about it not only on his podcast, but on his show, and throw out several things on Twitter, it's a really high confidence level that that's going to happen. There's been a high confidence level within the FSU base. Go ahead.
He's got a high confidence level. He said he doesn't know all the details and he doesn't know the timing. He thinks it's July.
Sure.
Sure. But I got to be honest. I'm not buying the college football playoffs have anything to do.
No. You understand what I'm saying? That was the only thing that was in the news, and even though the college football playoff might not have been the new agreement might not have been the mechanism, it is one of the pieces that allowed some of the other changes to happen. So they're all the same thing, even though they're not the same thing. The settlements, the governance changes, all the rest of this, everything had to happen. And if people were trying to throw little hints out there, they're not going to throw a hint of a court settlement. They're not going to throw the hints out there of governance changes coming out, because who was that? Was it Dellinger that leaked that out? Was that who it was? So what I'm saying is, we don't even know what's coming in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And there might be things that allow that trigger to get pulled, which would explain why a lawyer that works in the media industry would know about this. So I don't know. I mean, but that seems plausible. See, it's not necessarily that the 12-team playoff makes it easier for teams to leave, but the 12-team playoff had to get passed. All these other agreements had to be reached. It was just like one step after the next, after the next, after the next, and all these things had to happen. And within some of those rule changes, maybe some liabilities for the Power 2, maybe there's some things, or maybe there's some agreements, or maybe there's some agreements on teams being able to leave conferences or whatever else. I'm just saying we can't sign off on that because we don't know.
Yeah, I understand what I mean, why would Phillips and Yormark sign on that deal if there was something in that college football playoff thing? I don't know how.
But also, why would Phillips have started backfilling last year?
Well, because
he knew he couldn't keep the teams in. He knew he couldn't keep the teams in. He started backfilling last year.
Okay, I don't think it has anything to do with the college football playoff settlement.
What I'm saying is the college football playoff wasn't the exact mechanism, but it was part of the process to bring forth new governance changes, which could have allowed other things to happen, even as far as realignment. All these things had to happen. You can't look at it as just the college football playoff. You had to look at the change in the college football playoff, the power that the P2 was able to gather, the changes in governance and things that are coming. And it's not just a one-piece thing. You can't look at it at a micro level. You got to look at it big picture from 20,000 feet, and you see how all the pieces are coming together. I don't believe anybody created a provision in there for FSU to leave the ACC. What I'm saying is there's something in there. There's something going on. They're waiting for something. FSU is waiting for something.
I think all these governance issues and more power to the SEC and the Big Ten is creating more motivation, but I don't think there's any triggers in that. But I understand.
We don't even know what's in it.
Huh?
We don't even know what's in it, and I could be wrong. This is just this is a what if. What would stop any of these national reporters from reporting that? Hey, look what's in this college football playoff agreement. I mean, look, we've got yeah. Go ahead. I referenced the college football playoff agreement because that's about the time the rumor came out. Take the college football playoff agreement out of it. In other words, if somebody was saying that there's a possibility coming and then the college football playoff agreements passing secured that, what if that's just the first cog that sets off, or the first domino that sets off an inevitable event? Okay? It might not have anything in the agreement that has anything to do with that. But once that was agreed to, okay, the settlement, the governance changes, everything else falls into place. You couldn't have one, because I mean the P2, whether they were serious or whether they were just trying to stoke the fire, saying that they were fully prepared to walk away. We'll determine. I mean, we don't know if that's actually true, but according to Sankey, or at least I think some people have suggested that the SEC was fully prepared to walk away and do their own thing. So I don't know, but it's just this is definitely a conspiracy theory, but it's a what if. I'm throwing it out there because if FSU can just announce shortly and the ACC acquiesces without much of a fight, then we know something happened. Something was there. And if the court cases continue, okay, if there's a settlement and the court cases don't continue, you know, then well, they obviously there was a settlement. But if they announce the ACC acquiesces, and then if the court cases continue, you're like, okay, somebody strong-armed the ACC. Something happened. Because here's my thing. The ACC lawyers, even in court, says that they can't just keep FSU's rights and not give FSU anything in return for them. So if ESPN continues to be able to broadcast FSU's games after they left, and this would be in the terms of FSU being an independent in that scenario, there's got to be some type of a contract agreement. There's got to be something, because the ACC doesn't have the rights for non-members, and ESPN doesn't have the ability to broadcast.
That hasn't been determined yet. That's an argument that they don't have rights.
But once FSU, let's just say conspiracy theory, FSU just decided, okay, we're announcing and we're leaving. Now it's upon the ACC to prove they have.
I don't think so. I think it's upon the Florida. Things are going to keep going as it is. I don't. Again, we're back. Why would anything change if Florida State just said we're leaving? If that's the case, then Florida State would have just said we're leaving from day one.
Well, because the media partners that you want to continue to do business with in the future are the same ones that would be irritated by just your abrupt exit. Just an abrupt exit that causes a lot of headaches and hassles. Those are the same. There's only so many people you can do business with in this industry. And FSU's main two options are ESPN and Fox. That's it.
Well,
so
there might be some emerging options later on. But,
sure.
But again, Florida State's going to have to be careful about getting back to relationships part of this. They can't, they don't want to burn their bridges with everybody.
And you're making my point for me, because that's exactly it. Why haven't they already done? There's a difference between what you can do and what you should do and what you're going to do. They're not going to burn all their bridges just because they feel like they can and they would get a quick resolution on some aspect. You're zero in on the exact thing. They don't want to have a bad relationship with all these media partners. They don't want to have a bad relationship with the different conferences and so on. They want to have good relationships with most everybody, legally, professionally.
Yeah.
Your rivals, you're going to have, those type of relationship with your rivals, but that's just is what it is. But at the same time, they're applying whatever pressure they can apply. And anyway, we're just talking about theoreticals here. I don't even think that's ever going to even happen in court. But one other aspect, and I'm going to leave this alone. Jeff Cameron is as knowledgeable and as good of a radio host you'll find anywhere, not just for FSU media. I mean, he's really talented. He doesn't keep up with realignment that much. I mean, he knows it's been going on. He's been talking about it for years. He has a heavy SEC lean, not because he loves the SEC, but, it's just better for their business model if FSU went to the SEC. But he does talk a lot with Andy Staples and the David Hales and all the rest of that. And a lot of those guys I know they have a hard time believing that the SEC would let FSU and Clemson go to the Big Ten and then just plant a flag in the South. They have a hard time believing that. Even when there was a heavy Big Ten lean, 6-8 weeks ago when the chalk was FSU and Clemson to the Big Ten, he even acknowledged, he understands that's where this seems it's going. And he said, that's fine. If that's where it goes, then that's fine. Just getting out of the ACC is the number one priority. But he has said all along, he just can't fathom that ESPN would just let FSU and Clemson just leave and Fox plant a flag right in the middle of SEC country. He just can't fathom that.
Oh.
So maybe he's heard more. I can't tell.
I think he has. I think he's heard more. I think he's heard the chatter. He described it. Doesn't mean the chatter is correct. Because he said anyone who says they know exactly what's going to happen, he doesn't believe them. So.
Sure.
Not at this point.
Well, even though I believe it's a heavy Big Ten lean, as you were describing earlier, when it's time to make those negotiations, there could be a really sweetheart deal that the SEC and ESPN come forward with, and nobody would fault FSU for taking that. And I think it's possible. Yeah. And we'll see.
Yep.
But anyway, didn't mean to take up so much of your time.
Appreciate it. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you. All right, bye-bye.
Great call by JD Patrick. Josh Pate admitted that the details were not fully formed, but one thing has come out of that. A bomb is coming for the ACC within 8 weeks involving teams. Again, let me get through some super chats here. Ryan Thomas, the only real conspiracy is the evil Space Badgers. Camp Randall is a perfectly shaped to hide a UFO. There is a UFO story coming out, ladies and gentlemen, about a big UFO. Well, I'm not going to get into it right now. But anyways, well, maybe in the next live show. It was seen by a big bunch of rocks. That's all I'm going to say. Anyways, getting back to, there's a couple questions there was one in which somebody made a comment saying, Greg, you said pairs are important when it comes to expansion. It's not really about the number. It's expanding in pairs makes it easier, but it doesn't necessarily have to be in pairs. The reason why conferences go in pairs is because, first of all, with scheduling and all that stuff, but also it when you go in pairs, it's easier to grease the skids of all the interest that your that your conference has. The Big Ten is a huge conference, 18 institutions, and we've got all sorts of different presidents. All different presidents, not all, but many, many different presidents than when they made a decision to vote UCLA and USC into the conference in Washington and Oregon. We've already had a bunch of changes. University of Minnesota has a new president that started yesterday. And sometimes it takes a pair to grease the skids of everybody. Maryland and Rutgers. If it was just going to be Rutgers, it wasn't going to happen. It had to be Maryland with Rutgers. Oregon and Washington, it had to be the pair because they both were able to fulfill the interest of all those in the Big Ten. Oregon with Fox, Washington with the Big Ten presidents. That's why pairs can help. It's not needed. So the question that's, is like a Florida State, or we're focusing on Florida State, is Florida State Big Ten number 19? Would the Big Ten rush and sign Florida State to be the 19th member when they get their settlement done and all that, get released? It could happen, but I don't think it's something that happens right away. And I know I get a lot of flack for that, but that is what part of this stuff that we were told in May. The Big Ten is going to be deliberate and cautious. They make sure whatever options open up to them that they see it all before they make a commitment. In other words, the Big Ten is going to go check on the temperature of Notre Dame and what they want to do. If Notre Dame if Florida State and Clemson gets this settlement done, and then suddenly they can talk with the SEC and the Big Ten. A lot of people disagree with me, but all I can tell you is I'm not the only one that has been told this stuff. I'm not the only one who now something changed in the third week of May, or at least the communication of this has changed in the third week of May. Maybe not the story, but the communication. Suddenly it was like, hold on here. Florida State and Clemson to the Big Ten are no longer the chalk. It's still, and that's still true today. So we shall see. And there's stuff that I have not been able to get into, and I won't be able to get into it for quite a while. But I do know that I'm not the only one who's been told this. So Jeff Cameron might be a bit heavy, definitely a heavy SEC lean for Florida State for many months, but he reiterated that yesterday. Paul Feinbaum said Florida State not a Big Ten fit. Paul Feinbaum has been on every side of it, and he's also said that Florida State is not a fit to the SEC, but most recently he said they'd be the perfect fit for the SEC. So I think Paul Feinbaum is being told some stuff as well. So we shall see. It's nothing's done, nothing's been settled. According to Josh Pate, something big is going to happen now within the next 8 Saturdays. So we're going to keep following the story here at Peek Around the Corner. If you're new to the channel, if you haven't done so yet, please subscribe to our channel. Smash the like button if you liked our content. Share the video with your family and friends. We're going to close it up. We've been on the air for 3 hours. We still have almost 300 people in the chat room, but we got to close it up. We did an earlier show today just in case if we needed to do a later live show later in the night. So, again, when you subscribe, make sure you have your notifications turned on. The chatter behind the curtain is slow down, you move too fast on saying that Florida State and Clemson are a chalk to the Big Ten. They haven't been a chalk to the Big Ten since May 28th. It's July 2nd. Still holds true today. What is the big story? What is going to drop next? Stick with us. We'll be doing breaking news when it does. We'll be giving you more information, cloak and dagger style, when we get it. Buckle up, brace for impact. Until next time, from all of us at College Footballs, Peek Around the Corner, to all of you, please, you all take great care of each other. Thank you so very much.